Traffic was stopped, and I actually drove right up to the remains of this green Mercedes. And it was on its side with the roof facing me as I pulled up.
On August 4th, 2013, Deputy Richard Adair of the Ross County Sheriff's Department in Missouri responded to an accident involving two cars in a head-on collision.
It was obvious that this was a really bad accident. It wouldn't be surprising if it was a fatal. The girl, the driver, Katie, all I could see was the top of her head and one hand that was sticking out. I actually held her hand and talked to her and tried to calm her.
But none of his training or 30 years of experience prepared him for what came next.
She said she wanted to pray out loud, and then I became mortified.
Richard had grown up in church, but to him, prayer was just an empty ritual to a faraway, uncaring God.
I didn't know how to pray out loud. I knew, the Our Father, I knew the Hail Mary. I didn't know how to pray out loud. That, for me personally, was mortifying. Curtis White, the gentleman there, I asked, can you pray with her? Yes, no problem. And he took her hand, and I made the excuse to go check the other driver, the other vehicle.
The other driver suffered minor injuries, but had been drinking and charged with a DUI. As for Katie, it took fire crews 2 hours to safely cut her out of the tangled wreckage and put her on a chopper to the nearest trauma unit. Meanwhile, Richard couldn't stop thinking about the young woman who, despite being in excruciating pain and holding on to life, continued asking people to pray.
Katie never screamed, she never cried out loud, she never cursed, she never was angry. All she did was pray out loud. And I just couldn't believe that as a 50-some-year-old man, how that young girl had that much faith in God, and I didn't.
That's because over the past year, Richard had been trying to come to terms with the disappointments and failures in his own life and was searching for meaning and purpose.
I wanted to go to church. I guess I was looking for something that was missing.
Then later, Richard and his wife Debbie visited Katie and her family at Blessing Hospital in Quincy, Illinois.
I looked at my wife and I said, I can't believe how happy everybody is. It's almost like we're at a birthday party. And her mother looked at me and said, we could be planning a funeral right now and Katie's alive. And because of God's grace, Katie's alive.
Finally, Richard understood what he had been struggling with.
I was missing a relationship with God. I had no relationship with God.
Soon afterwards, Richard and Debbie went to a local church service.
I knew the first time I was there, when we were talking about God and Jesus, and it clicked. I don't know how to explain it. I knew at that moment, it was like someone opening their eyes for the first time.
In the coming months, Richard started reading the Bible and praying. As he did, he came to understand and accept God's love and forgiveness. During that time, he committed his life to Jesus Christ.
I realized that I had to become right with God and correct things. I had to let go of anger that I held against others and just let it go. It's not for me to judge. It's over. Release that, let it go.
As he grew in his relationship with God, the people he felt he needed to share his new faith with the most were his children.
I'd never even talked to my own children about God. I mean, they went to parochial schools. They, did all the sacraments that our religion had you do, things I failed to teach them, and that was hard. It's not easy going to your children, your grown children, and saying, hey, I messed up. I didn't know God and didn't know how to show you who God was.
As Richard lived out his faith, Debbie and his children also made a commitment to Jesus Christ.
Here I am, a 53-year-old man who's 30 years as a cop, and I'm filling up because it's emotional, and it is. It's hard to explain. Sometimes it's hard to put into words. God used Katie that day in her suffering.
And it's all because of a young woman, a stranger, who had the faith to pray.
It's a simple prayer, is just talking to God and having that relationship to be able to do that.